Welcome back to the BSD YouTube channel. As always, your host, Patrick Herbler, joined as always by Tim Aiden and Jarrett Slanina. Fellas, welcome to another episode. This one, the FIU preview. We'll overreact to some week one stuff as well. And of course, we will have to talk about the news of Penn State potentially switching from Nike to Adidas. Got some feedback here. All right. Sorry about that. Anyway, fellas, how are we doing? Tim, Jarrett, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great. Happy to be back and happy we're kind of in full swing of football season. I spent my entire long weekend. I was social and did some other stuff, but most of the time was either watching football, listening to podcasts about football, reading about football. Like it was just totally inundated myself with college football for several days, which was pretty glorious.
Yeah, same over here. Watched the other games after Penn State's, just kind of basking in the glory of college football having the entire weekend to itself before the NFL gets underway starting tomorrow when Pat's Birds take on the Cowboys.
Yeah,
I'm surprised you're not rocking the Eagles cap tonight, Pat.
I can never do. I'm not a hat with the glasses guy. Today was glasses day, so
okay.
I don't do the hat with the glasses. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe we'll do it on Saturday. So we'll see. But yes, excited for that. But first, we're going to talk about all Penn State related stuff. Obviously, the big news this week, other than the actual game itself, is that Penn State might be switching from Nike to Adidas. And when this broke online yesterday, to say that people were upset would be an understatement. People very clearly like Nike more than they like Adidas. Not to be like I heard about this, so it wasn't news to me, but I actually did hear about this in early July. And I do have proof of receipt. I was talking with Clay Sortig about it way back in July. So seeing this pop up, a little surprised by the timing, just because I didn't think it would be something that would happen in season. But yeah, everything from the sound of it was that this was something that was in motion, and now it's come to fruition. So, Tim, give me your thoughts on Penn State switching from Nike to Adidas, because I've seen a lot of the Penn State Nike tradition. This goes back to, even the 70s when Joe Paterno started his relationship with Phil Knight. What are your thoughts on Penn State potentially? And we should say potentially because it's just potentially leaving Nike.
Well, end of an era. And really just my entire Penn State football watching life. It's always been Penn State was a Nike school. The players are rocking the swoosh on their jerseys. It's a little shocking that just read that news yesterday. But I don't know, as somebody who doesn't really own any Nike or Adidas gear these days, I guess I'm a little indifferent on it. And I was reading that, I guess there's an On3 article, which I don't have a subscription to On3, but apparently there's a Reddit post that's citing in the article that there's a significant NIL backing with this Adidas deal. So obviously this probably has a lot to do with Penn State getting a bigger NIL pot from switching over. And I believe Adidas, they're not a whole lot of schools that they're in on, and I know Tennessee is one of them. I want to say Miami is another one, but they
Tennessee, Miami, Texas A&M, Louisville, Washington, NC State. Those are some of the bigger ones. Texas Tech, I believe, is Adidas as well. So
okay, so Tennessee, Miami, those are probably their biggest names. Penn State arguably, as big, if not a bigger name. They probably will be their biggest name if this deal goes through.
For now, that's one of the things I've seen. And Adidas has really good marketing when it comes to signing these schools, because if you talk to a Washington fan, they will say, when Washington signed with Adidas, they were going to be the flagship school. With Miami signed, with Texas A&M is signed. So Adidas does a really good job of making sure these colleges feel warm and welcomed, and that they will be the flagship, the premier school. I was even reading an article in Tennessee, it was about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, when Tennessee made the switch announced their switch from Nike to Adidas. And the Tennessee article was saying a similar thing of unprecedented NIL, and Tennessee will be the flagship school. And 3 weeks later, it seems like my guess as well is that that Penn State certainly got a better deal than Tennessee, just because that's what I think will happen. I'm not saying that I don't think that Penn State won't be a priority for Adidas. I think they certainly will be, especially if the money that's being reported is true. But I just don't buy like what Under Armour is for Maryland and Notre Dame, which Maryland's, whatever there, or what Oregon is for Nike. I don't know if that's going to be the case for Penn State and Adidas, because I think when USC, when Florida State, when all these different schools, when their deals run up with Nike or Jordan, whoever they're with, like, I don't think that Adidas is just going to say, whoa, we have Penn State, we're okay. Not to say that Penn State will ever become like an afterthought, kind of what they were becoming with Nike, but I don't know if this is going to be like hey, Adidas is fully just funding Penn State's program. Jared, your thoughts, whether it's money related, whether it's apparel related, thoughts on Penn State switching from Nike to Adidas?
Yeah, I've spent almost no mental energy thinking about this since the news broke yesterday. If it's good for Penn State's NIL funding, then I'm happy with the move. But yeah, I'm really I feel like when I'm watching a game, I'm not even going to notice or consider what's on the jersey. So if it's good for the program, it helps us bring in some players and retain some of the players like we saw this year with some of the older guys who decided to stay, then I'm all for it. But I don't really have a horse in the race one way or the other.
Yeah, and
I do wonder, not to interrupt, but I do wonder what this means for potential uniforms. I'm thinking, the alternate variety, maybe black and pink jerseys for a game.
Again,
Jared's not a fan.
No, just completely my thoughts on this isn't like sourced or anything, but how Penn State was with Nike and how Penn State is even with, I know like before we were talking about home field, like all the great stuff home field has. Penn State is very particular. Even when home field originally came out with their line, like it took forever for Penn State to allow that to happen. And even when they did, I know it was not to say limited, because I literally own 3 of the shirts, but I do know that home field wanted to be a little bit more creative with what Penn State has, and Penn State did not allow them to. So the same way that Nike has, I don't know if you've seen, right, all the cool stuff that players and coaches wear. Like I know James Franklin has like a PSU like heavy jacket. It's like script PSU that's just like flat out not sold. My understanding is that's Penn State's doing. I don't foresee any reason why a switch to Adidas would change how Penn State thinks about what they're doing with their uniforms and what they're doing with their apparel that's being sold. We'll see, maybe, but I think that everything will basically stay the same, other than instead of a Nike swoosh, we'll just have the Adidas stretch, which, by the way, I am repping the brand. Give me here we go. Give me NIL deal, Adidas. Come on. Sponsor. It could be a sponsor on the podcast. Could be a sponsor, not a sponsor, but could be a sponsor. Yeah, at the end of the day, none of this really matters. It's literally a $40 billion company and going to a $25 billion company. It's all going to be okay. Nike,
as long as the uniforms don't shrink in the dryer like that episode of Seinfeld, I'll be fine with it.
Everything will be okay. Before we get into the rest of the show, we're going to be talking Florida International, our overreactions from week 1, looking ahead to the rest of the week 2 slate. Just want to say, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps a ton. We want to get this thing to as many subscribers as we can. I believe we were at 225 subscribers last time we checked. So let's up that a little bit more. So yes, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and liking the video. We appreciate any and all support that we can get. All right, let's talk Florida International University. Their first time coming to Penn State since 2007. Tim, who was the coach of FIU back in 2007?
That would be one Mario Cristobal.
There we go. Mario Cristobal, now at his alma mater, Miami. Head coach FIU back in the day when they came to Penn State. They are back this Saturday in Beaver Stadium for a noon kick with Penn State. To be honest with you guys, right, FIU, not a very good team. They beat Bethune-Cookman last week, 42-9, I believe was the final score. solid quarterback, Keon Jenkins, smaller guy, lefty quarterback, decent athlete, but doesn't run a whole ton or doesn't necessarily run on like a lot of like QB draws and stuff like that. If he'll play breaks down, he's certainly capable, but wouldn't expect to see him use the way that Nevada used Chuba Purdy last week. They have some good running backs. 3 of them got 8 carries last week, but again, we're not going to go super in depth on Florida International and look at the 3-hour game they had with Bethune-Cookman. Penn State is a 40-plus point favorite in this game for a reason. So instead of looking directly at FIU, we're going to kind of just talk about what do we want to see from Penn State, right? Last week, we saw a lot of good things as far as Drew Eller's efficiency, Deni Dennis Sutton dominating, generally like just efficient offense. So what do we want to see this week when Penn State takes the field against Florida International? And Jarrett, we'll start with you. So we all picked 2 things, one offensively, one defensively, things we want to see. Jarrett, give me the offensive thing that you want to see from Penn State on Saturday.
Yeah, I want to see Devontae Ross more involved in the offense and the passing game. Pena and Hudson both had tremendous starts in their first game, had 7 and 6 catches. Hudson had the touchdown and came kind of flirted with the 100-yard game. So really excellent start for them. Devontae Ross, had a hugely productive year for Troy last season, and he missed some time with some injuries over summer. So he's been working himself back onto the field. He did have 1 catch last week. He had 1 reception. It wasn't a 4th downs, which shows that, Aller does have some trust on him to look for him in that situation. So, we saw what we hope should be coming from the other 2. So hopefully Ross gets a little bit more involved this week. He's feeling healthy and just, back to himself and comfortable in this offense, because it's just really important to see Aller build rapport with all 3 of those receivers before things turn to 11 really quickly here against Oregon in a few weeks.
Yeah, I know, right? One of the things last year that Penn State, especially as the season went on, was a lot of, I don't want to say force feeding to Tyler Warren because that makes it sound like it was a negative thing, but I don't necessarily want to get into the habit of just Kyron Hudson, just Trevor Pena, especially early in the season, right? Really what these games are for is, yes, for Penn State to, iron things out, make sure everything's working smoothly, but it's also giving Oregon so many different looks where they're not going to be sure what exactly Penn State's main game plan is going to be. So, yeah, as nice as it was to see, Kyron Hudson play as well as he did and get the targets, and Trevor Pena play as well as he did and get the targets, certainly getting, Devontae Ross, someone who they brought in and fully believe in the ball a little bit more, will be something to watch for. Tim, how about you? Something offensively you want to see from Penn State on Saturday?
I would like to see, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, one of those guys just bust off an explosive run play, something that goes for at least 20 yards, something that was missing last week. And now part of that had to do, of course, with the defense special teams setting up Penn State with prime field position, which, of course, they couldn't cash in for touchdowns a couple times, but that's another story. But I want to see I just want to, last year in the opener against West Virginia, we saw Nick Singleton rip off like a couple 40-plus yard runs, one which went for a touchdown. So just something like that, just so I feel like it'll be reassuring and not – because otherwise, if they have the same issues they had last week with being able to get any explosive run plays going, my mind's going to start racing back to 2 years ago when they were just – unable to bust off any huge runs for a good chunk of the season, even against lesser opponents.
So against Nevada, and this is if I don't know if you guys remember or not, but when I did the podcast, the original Black Shoes Basic podcast back in the day, we always had a stat of the week via my friend Sean Martin. He has given me some stats of the week, and his stat of the week was against Nevada, this was the lowest rushing leader, 43 yards for Katron Allen, since September 1st, 2022 against Purdue, when who only had 31 yards. So, Tim, I know you love your trivia. Who was Penn State's leading rusher against Purdue?
It's got to be Kevon Lee, right?
Nope.
Oh. Sean Clifford?
Nope. So the trick question. It's Katron Allen. Katron Allen was also the leading rusher for Penn State against Purdue on that day. So thank you, Sean Martin, for the stat of the week. Appreciate it. Yeah, would love to see some big runs. I know you mentioned the West Virginia game last year, like getting those big runs from Singleton after the year that he had in 2023 certainly felt nice. So if Penn State could do that again, would certainly be nice as well. My offensive thing that I'm looking for is really simple. I just want some stat padding, and specifically for Drew Aller. Only one passing touchdown last week, only threw for just over 200 yards. So, not that I'm trying to win the Heisman, but I want more and more hype for Drew as we go along. And, games against FIU and games against Villanova, these are kind of where you need to get those 4 touchdowns, those 5 touchdown games, throwing for, 300 yards. So my thing for this week is, when Penn State's in the red zone, let's listen. I know there were some concerns last week over Penn State's, inability to generate big runs. But I have no doubt that Penn State will be a good rushing team. I have no doubt that when they're in the red zone, that's something that they can lean their hat on. But there's going to come a point in time, whether it's against Oregon, whether it gets Ohio State, whether it's in a playoff game, where it's 3rd and goal from the 4 or from the 5, and Penn State's going to have to throw the ball, or they probably should throw the ball. And that's kind of where I want to see, has Drew made those leaps and steps there where he can fire something into a smaller hole than usual. So I want to see more of that against FIU. So just stat padding. Let's, it's just like in the college football video game when, I'm doing like a Road to Glory with a quarterback. If it's 1st and goal from the 3, like, I'm not running the ball. I'm not handing that thing off. We're throwing the ball. So let's get Drew some touchdowns and maybe just toss him into that Heisman conversation if we can. All right, Tim, we'll go back to you for defense. What's on the defensive you want to see Penn State get done?
I mean, I didn't really rewatched too much of the Nevada game, but it didn't seem like there was much blitzing, if any. And I get that. They were just maybe trying to play a more basic defense against an overmatched opponent. But I would like to see some blitzing this week a little more against FIU, just so they're not saving it all for Oregon. So at least the guys get some live fire action at trying to blitz a QB. But I just want to, maybe a little bit more aggressiveness. But I understand, not needing to be aggressive against these types of opponents, but just to get those reps in for for an Oregon or an Ohio State or, a lot of Big Ten teams, really.
Yeah, it's a delicate line between, getting those reps in, as you say, making sure that things are firing on all cylinders while also not actually giving anything away. But yeah, I would like to see a more aggressive defense. And I think this offense in general for FIU is going to lean more to that, just because Nevada really was just trying to run the ball. And Jared, if I understand correctly, I believe that what you're looking for defensively kind of goes into that.
Yeah. I just want to see what the secondary can do. I think they have an outstanding secondary this year, but would just like to see them get a little more tested this week. Florida International has a pretty good quarterback. This is actually his 3rd year as a starter. Was good enough to start as a true freshman. Often looked like a true freshman that year, but took a huge step forward last year, completed 62% of his passes, 22 touchdowns, and just 8 interceptions. As you mentioned earlier, he's got decent mobility, but not necessarily a strong runner. So, I just kind of want to see them try to at least attempt to air it out a little bit. And I'm especially interested to see what the safety position opposite Zakee Wheatley looks like. Antoine Belgrave Shorter was kind of a surprise pick to be the starter in that spot. So didn't really get to see too much out of him last week, just because, like I was saying, Nevada just was not focused on establishing a passing game. So kind of want to see, what the hype is about, what the coaches saw in him. Also, Dewan Lane and King Mack should both be playing a pretty big role in the defense this year. So really interested in all 3 of those. I thought Lane looked really good last week. He definitely popped off the screen a little bit, was pretty aggressive in the run game. So I'd imagine he had a pretty big offseason, developed a bit off of a freshman year where he did get to play a little bit of a true freshman. So yeah, mainly just want to see a little bit more about that safety competition. The three guys who we're going to see a lot more throughout the year.
Do we have a preference for? I know Belgrade Shorter was announced as the starter coming out of camp, and I think it would be surprised to see him lose it, but I think all three of those guys were pretty close. Do we have a preference one way or another, like going into that Oregon game or going into the Ohio State game, or as the season goes along? Do we have a preference for who we want to see at safety? Because I kind of lean in the direction of I wanted Lane to win it, and I think it is a little concerning that just with how he played last year, as far as not getting redshirted while Belgrade Shorter got redshirted. So it kind of showed that, hey, we like Lane more last year, but he didn't take the necessary steps this offseason. So do we have a preference as far as who wins that safety job when the dust fully settles?
Not particularly. I think they're all three of them are capable. We're not seeing what the coaches are seeing. So if they really believe Belgrave Shorter is, the clear person in that spot, then I'm fine with that. Jim Knowles is making $3.3 million this year to coach the Penn State defense, won the national championship last year. So I trust him. I do kind of think, though, I wouldn't be surprised if we see them kind of not necessarily stick with a hot hand, but based off of what the offense is, what they're trying to establish from week to week. I wouldn't be surprised if some weeks we see more of Max, some weeks we see more of Lane, some weeks we see more of Belgrave Shorter. So no strong preference, but all are going to contribute. And I just wouldn't be surprised if we see some games we see more of one than the other two.
Yeah, safety's always been one of those spots that they don't generally have like a heavy rotation, like comparatively to like defensive end or even linebacker. Like I think back to when Kobe King and Tyler Elston in 2022, like they both basically played about 50% of the snaps. We don't necessarily see that at safety all that often. I guess we would have seen like a little bit more of it last year with Zakee Wheatley if Kevin Winston had stayed healthy, but that's also like a nickelback situation. So yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of really hopeful of what Lane could have been, just the size and the athleticism. And, hopefully it is more of a case of Belgrave Shorter taking that, job by, taking that job himself rather than Lane losing it. But
yeah. If I recall correctly, Lane did play a bit earlier in the season. I felt like his snaps were reduced as the season went on. So I thought maybe the coaches were really high on him and then thought, you know what? We like him, but I think he may need a little bit more seasoning, a little more experience. Yeah,
there was just such a drastic difference between Reed and Wheatley as far as their experience goes in Lane. So my take defensively, and this is, I guess, kind of similar to my stat padding thing, but one of the big keys last weekend was Chaz Coleman at defensive end, Jalen Harvey at defensive end, the two young guys. How are they going to look specifically with Sariah Fisher out last week? It does look like that he'll be a go for this week, but that it will be he'll be on some snap count. So I certainly think we'll still see a ton of Chaz Coleman and Jalen Harvey. Not to say that I'm down on Chaz Coleman, super athletic, had a couple nice pass rush moves. I just question physically, how does he hold up? He looks like a wide receiver out there, not a defensive end. So as the season goes along, yes, getting sacks is great and important, but as far as what I kind of want out of that second defensive end position, I must think of someone that can just be a little bit more consistent in the run game and things like that. And I'm just a little bit more hopeful about Jalen Harvey, just, a little bit bigger of a guy, a little bit thicker, just that extra year of experience. So just want to see Jalen Harvey kind of show out and make some game-wrecking plays. He's a guy that, as a recruit, I absolutely loved. I think he was in my top 3 in the class. Just a super athletic guy, reminded me a lot of Chop Robinson, right down to the same high school and now the same number 44 at Penn State. So not to say that he's that caliber of athlete of Chop, but I think that just because he's not Chaz Coleman as an athlete out there, that doesn't mean that he's not someone that can't be really, really good. Just thought that last week he looked like he was thinking a little bit more than just playing. And against the likes of, Nevada and FIU, that's not what you want to see. So again, everything is like baptism by fire, specifically when it's going into that Oregon game. So getting these guys reps right now is super important. So we just love to come out of this with, Jalen Harvey with a sack and 2 tackles for loss and a forced fumble or something along those lines, just to make me feel a little bit better about defensive end, just because I am starting to question a little bit. You guys' thoughts on the end?
Yeah, I think if Penn State wants to reach the lofty goals it's setting for itself this year, both Harvey and Coleman will need to be, have a very reliable presence and make some plays against some very good offensive lines late in the season. Between Dennis Sutton and Zariah Fisher, they're going to be rotating in and out a little bit. You might get some injuries throughout the year, so they're definitely going to be relying on those two late in the year. And this is a great time for them to develop and kind of show some improvement. But I'm right on board with you because they'll definitely need to really come on this year for sure.
Let's jump into our week 1 overreactions. So what we're going to do here, we each have one Penn State overreaction, one Big Ten related overreaction, and then one, national college football, can be anything, overreaction. We're going to stick with Penn State here just because this does kind of tie in with what we're talking about with the FIU game. Tim, what is your week 1 overreaction? Again, let me just preface this for the audience. It's an overreaction. That's the point, right? We're not pointing out things that are supposed to be like super obvious. It's not supposed to be, Drew Aller, I think, is a solid quarterback. It's overreactions. We're going to be a little bit wild here, maybe negative, maybe super positive, who knows, but it's called an overreaction. So just let us be. But Tim, what is your overreaction to week 1?
So I understand it was in garbage time against Nevada, but I was very impressed with how Ethan Grunkmeyer looked out there. Had some real zip on the ball, was very decisive, showed a good set of wheels. Quite frankly, if I hope we don't find ourselves in a situation, but if we do find ourselves in a situation similar to what we saw last year at Wisconsin, where Drew Aller gets hurt and the backup has to come in, play the rest of the game, I actually will feel more confident with Grunkmeyer spelling for Drew than I did last year when Bo had to sub in for him in Madison.
Jared, do you agree with that take?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a little torn on Bo because I didn't get the best impression of him when he was kind of coming in for some of these gadget plays here and there. And I think that had more to do with taking offense out of rhythm rather than him. But he did really impress me in the Wisconsin game. But no, Grunkmeyer just looks like he's got a really, he's got an NFL arm. He's got a ton of potential. I'm sure the offseason was just huge for him to in terms of development. And I was just really impressed with how he handled himself in that touchdown drive, 94-yard drive. They had a penalty at one point, and I think he just came right back and had a shot to Dinkins for a first down right after that. So just considering, his level of experience and the amount of composure he showed with the second teamers, really impressed. So yeah, you know what? I'll go ahead and agree with Tim and say, yeah, I think I would have more confidence with him coming off the bench if needed.
I like the idea of Bo in a pinch, right? If it's like the Wisconsin game last year, right? Like in the middle of the game, bringing Bo in because he's so drastically different from Drew as far as, just honestly the athleticism and his running ability. I feel like that can really throw off a team, right? It's almost like when I go back to Penn State's game against Ohio State in 2011 when they came out and just did the Wildcat. And it literally took Ohio State like 2 quarters to figure out like, oh, they're literally just running the Wildcat in any like big situation. Bo's kind of similar in that respect where he's just such a dangerous runner that if, again, like we saw last year, like he can have so much success specifically when teams aren't ready for it. If it's over the long period of a season, and again, knock on wood here, because certainly don't want Drew to be missing like 3 or 4 games, I think it does make more sense to have someone like Grunkmeyer who has more of an arm, can run more of the offense that's similar to Drew's, just because, again, not to say that Bo is a terrible thrower, but I think he's a level or 2 below Drew for sure, and I think he's a level or 2 below Grunkmeyer as well. So just from like a cohesiveness level, I think Grunkmeyer makes more sense if, for whatever reason, hopefully it does not happen, but Penn State has to go to him for a couple games or 2, just to keep the offense kind of similar. Jarrett, speaking of Drew Aller, what is your overreaction to week 1?
So yes, the keyword is overreaction here, but from what I saw, I'm just gonna swing for the fences and say Drew Aller is gonna be the number 1 overall draft pick this coming April. He's gonna have the type of season and just kind of prove himself to elevate himself to that position. I mean, he's got pretty much everything the NFL wants in terms of size. He's got an incredibly strong arm, leadership, the experience, good mobility, not a lightning fast runner, but definitely great mobility in the pocket, and guy can pick up a first down with his legs at times. And as an aside, let's hope he doesn't. Let's hope he slides a little bit more this week. I don't want to see him put himself in danger like he did last week when it's not necessary. But anyways, the thing that I thought was holding him back was just some accuracy issues, which I think were really related to his footwork, to his technique. A lot of times he'd have happy feet. He'd be throwing off his back foot. Wouldn't have his feet set when he threw the ball. It seems like he really focused and worked on that and cleaned that up this offseason. So I think between that, I think that's really going to help with his accuracy. Another big thing I think that's going to help is that it seems like he has receivers he can trust this year. And I think a lot of times last year when we said, "Oh, Drew missed that pass," where was he throwing? I think a lot of times the receivers weren't where they were supposed to be or where he was expecting them to be. He thought they were going to adjust, and they just simply didn't. So, yeah, that's kind of my thought with him. I thought it was just kind of a situation where he needed to improve his accuracy a little bit and his techniques for the NFL to really see what he can do to live up to those Josh Allen comparisons. But I think that's exactly what's going to happen, and I'm going to put my money on him being the first overall pick.
The difference between good quarterback play and great quarterback play sometimes comes down to something as simple as your receiver making a great catch. Like you think of Penn State last year against Boise State, like some of the touchdown pass to Tyler Warren and how he's able to go up and get the ball. And Tim, I don't know if you watched LSU, or excuse me, not LSU, Miami and Notre Dame on Sunday, but right, like everyone is talking about Carson Beck and how well he played. I think the biggest play of that game was a terrible throw from Carson Beck, probably a ball that could have been intercepted. Instead, LSU's wide receiver CJ Daniels makes a one-handed just catch of the year, right? Shades of Kyron Hudson last year at the same time, making a play like that. And you think back to the Orange Bowl with Drew, again, he made some really bad throws as well, but if a receiver could have made a catch like that, like how drastically does that change, Penn State season and change Drew Aller and all those different things. So yeah, it turns out that it appears that having good wide receivers helps the quarterback as well. So in agreement with you there, Jarrett. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I said I agree with it too. I mean, I could see him being number 1 overall pick if he continues to elevate his game, looks like the improved quarterback he looked at last week. And also depends on who has the number 1 pick overall. If it's a team like the Saints or the Browns, then yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
In that case, I might be rooting for him to drop. We might have to plant like some, there's character issues, or he has all these parking tickets or something like that. I don't know if I want him to go to the Saints or Browns. I was like the idea.
Credit though, he grew up as a huge Browns fan, and has mentioned that he would like to. He would love to play for Cleveland one day. So, more credit to him. I'm a Browns fan. I'm not certain if that would be the best landing spot for him myself, even with my lifelong Browns fandom. But he did mention something about he apparently went to he had season tickets to the Browns growing up, and basically didn't miss a Browns game in person from like the ages of like 8 through the time he was an upperclassman and had to miss some because of his obligations playing football. And trust me, he saw a lot of really bad football at some of those games. So good on him to be a devoted fan like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that one to rep the hometown team. I like the idea. I believe the Rams have 2 first-round picks in this coming draft. I like the idea of them. Right, Stafford is constantly breaking down. Old guy. I know he just signed an extension, but who really knows? My ideal is the Rams trade up and they get Drew, and we get Sean McVay just having Drew for 5 to 10 years. And
that's a nice landing spot for a quarterback for sure.
that is my ideal what I'm rooting for Drew. But my overreaction from week 1, certainly not saying anyone's going to be the number 1 overall pick, so maybe this is a little bit tamed, but so much of our tight end talk this offseason was Luke Reynolds, Khalil Dinkins, and I think those are still the leaders in the clubhouse to be Penn State's tight end 1. Andrew Rappleyea, people forget, started that West Virginia game. He was a starter with Tyler Warren. He ends up having some sort of injury. I think if you saw the game on Saturday, you saw him with the compression on his leg, so certainly was a leg injury of some sort that caused him to miss the rest of the season. Didn't get a ton of run early in the game, came in, specifically with Gronkmeyer, and I think showed out why he was such a highly touted prospect, why Penn State worked so hard to flip him from Michigan, a one-time Michigan commit, and why he was someone that was going to have a bigger impact on the offense last year. Again, 3 receptions, had that really nice catch and run where he broke a tackle and then spun away. Liam Clifford got called for a hold then, but just kind of showcased the fact that I think he can be the all-around tight end that Penn State might need. Not to say that Khalil Dinkins isn't, not to say Luke Reynolds can't be that either, but I think that as this season goes along, I would be putting money into Andrew Rappleyea potentially being Penn State's tight end 1 by the end of the season.
Spicy take there. I'm not saying it can't happen, but of course I feel like Luke Reynolds that's probably my guy to become the tight end number 1. The fact he was starting last week kind of spoke volumes for me. And
understand that. It's just that I think Rappleyea, he's still working his way back. I saw there was a quote from him where he was, even at the beginning of camp, he was still having to wear a knee brace. And you saw in the game that he didn't have the knee brace on. He just had the compression leg sleeve. So I think that as he gets healthier, and I don't know, not to compare Luke Reynolds to Jonathan Holland back in the day, but I think back to 2018 when Jonathan Holland was the starting tight end. And as the season went along, in came Pat Freiermuth. Again, not comparing Rappleyea exactly to that situation, just because I think Luke Reynolds is a lot better than John Holland. But I just think that he's going to be closer to the Reynolds Dinkins level than kind of in this lower tier that he seemingly has been, at least in the fan base's mind. I think by the time we get to the Nebraska game and Rutgers and later in the season, that we'll be thinking of Rappleyea right along with Reynolds and Dinkins, and potentially as the best tight end on the team.
Yeah, there was there was so much buzz around Rappleyea last offseason, but before his injury. So yeah, I think he's got the abilities, incredibly athletic and really good at creating mismatches. So I honestly think you could make an argument for all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Being leading tight end, leading receiver at tight end. And right now, if I had to really predict, I think I would probably say all 3 of them are going to have between 25, 35 catches and kind of all be clustered together stat wise at the end of the season.
That is probably the reality situation. But again, we're here to give some overreactions. So give me Rappleyea stock. I will certainly eat it up. Jarrett, let's go to you for your Big Ten overreaction. So any Big Ten team, any Big Ten players, what's something that you saw in week 1 that you want to overreact to?
Yeah, so you ever make a prediction that at the time you just have that gut feeling and you think this is going to happen. Nebraska's going to upset Ohio State this week or whatever the case may be. And then Ohio State.
I just said a week ago I had Alabama as my national champion. So
there you go. Okay, there you go. But then you look back at the facts and you think, why did I ever come to that conclusion? What would have even made me think that? Not that you were wrong, but you don't even understand where you were coming from. But my thought coming to season that Iowa was going to have a good offense. I was pretty high on their quarterback they brought in, Gronowski, won a couple FCS championships. I just thought he was going to, I wouldn't say light things up, but be a competent, steady presence in that offense, and just kind of add a different dimension that we haven't seen for Iowa's offense in a long time. The first game did not get off to a good start. He was 8 of 15 for 44 yards, I believe, against Albany. And just Yeah, not a good showing for the first game off the bat. Makes you really wonder that what he is going to do once he starts playing some Big Ten defenses. So I was on board with Iowa potentially being a pretty dangerous team with having a much better offense than they typically have, at least over the last 5 years or so. I am definitely off that bandwagon and think their offensive struggles are going to continue again this year.
What's funny is that when he was at South Dakota State 2 years ago, they played Albany in the FCS championship semifinal. They beat Albany 59-0. He was 15 of 19 for 265 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, ran the ball 5 times for 50 yards. So in classic Iowa fashion, right, he gets to Iowa, plays an Albany team that is way worse, right? Greg Gattuso was at Albany these past couple of years, built up a really good program. He ends up coming back to Penn State. He's here as an analyst now. So this is not even a good FCS Albany team, and he struggles against them.
That's confusing because when I'm watching this, I'm thinking he played defenses at this level, the even better defenses than this, that I'm sure he did performed much better against at his previous stop at South Dakota, and now he's at Iowa and just looks like every other Iowa quarterback since Ricky Stan's here or so.
Tim, we are going to talk about the Iowa State game coming up here in a little bit, but general thoughts on Iowa? I mean, I think that was all a little disconcerting for us to
I remember I had to pull this without pulling up. I think he threw for 21 yards or something like that.
I believe it was 44.
44 yards. I mean, something very tiny, but something laughable, for all the hype he was getting coming into Iowa and for what he did at the FCS level. So yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe it's just Iowa. That's how it is with they're just not a team that throws the ball well. They don't exactly have game-breaking receivers. They're just a team that's going to try to ground and pound you, beat you with their defense, in special teams, Ferentz ball at its finest. But yeah, I think I agree with that take. Not that I was ever on the Iowa bandwagon. I was kind of in wait and see mode of Gronowski. And I mean, granted, it is 1 week, but
Tim, it's overreactions.
It's overreactions. So
that's
overreaction is
that's the point. We're overreacting. We are overreacting. So you mentioned the stench of the Iowa offense, right? Doesn't matter who is there. It's the Iowa offense at the end of the day. Similarly, your take is about Ohio State's defense.
That's right. In addition to losing Jim Knowles to Penn State, they also lost several key guys on their defense, including Jack Sawyer, the defensive end. But they did have Caleb Downs coming back, of course, but still, they lost several guys on the defensive side of the ball. And this is, week 1 against Texas, a team, ranked number 1 preseason, returning a lot of key players. Of course,
the Heisman front runner.
Huh?
The Heisman front runner at quarterback.
Heisman front runner, which I never bought into him being Heisman front runner, Arch Manning, but I certainly did not expect this level of performance for them in week 1 with a new coordinator. Albeit Matt Patricia has a pretty good reputation for being a good D coordinator of the NFL. But still, just a lot of moving parts. You figure maybe it would take them a couple of weeks to get settled in. And, Texas is not exactly the ideal opponent to try and get settled into. But lo and behold, I mean, they shut out Texas until the final 7-8 minutes or something like that. I mean, granted, I guess part of that's to do with Arch just not looking good with his mechanics and his field vision. I still remember him. There was I think it was a drive before they scored, but they were in the red zone. I think it was 4th down, and there was a crosser. I could see it on my screen. I thought he was going to throw to that crosser, would have had an easy touchdown. But then he's locked in on his receiver running a fade to the corner of the end zone and throws one up for him. And receiver he did get his hands on it, but he couldn't quite pull it down. But it's things like that was a little surprising. But credit to the Ohio State defense. So they played a lot better than I thought they would for game one with new coordinator and several new starters. So yeah, my overreaction is this defense has not skipped a beat, and the offense, I think it's only going to get better as Julian Sayin gets more and more comfortable in his role. So, I mean, by November, we might be very much talking about an Ohio State repeat.
Don't like that, but yeah, I mean, it was an impressive display, specifically that back seven. Like, I don't think there's a better linebacker, safety, quarterback tandem in the country than what Ohio State has. So as that defensive line, because that was one of the things that we talked about last week, or at least I talked about last week, what Ohio State was losing on the defensive front, how they could combat that. And yeah, if you just have 7 guys at linebacker and safety and corner who are all going to be NFL players, that helps things. That helps things a lot. So yeah, Ohio State still good, turns out. My Big Ten overreaction, one of the things we talked about was last week, Penn State's game against UCLA, going to the Rose Bowl the week after Oregon, right? No bye week in between. They play Northwestern right after at home. So, right, it's a trap game. And so it's not to say that Northwestern game is a big game, but it's kind of sandwiched in a weird spot in the schedule. Could UCLA be that trap game? Could they give Penn State some trouble? UCLA looked absolutely terrible against Utah. Got blown out. Utah might have looked like the best, had the best performance, which, okay, give some credit to Kyle Whittingham and the Utes for doing that. But I think a lot of that was UCLA based. Nico looked okay. I mean, they got blown out, so it's like, how good can you look? And specifically, the UCLA offensive line, they went into the portal, tried to rebuild that thing, and it just did not work out. Utah's defensive line just feasted on them. And if there's one spot where, right, if you're going to pull an upset, where do you need at least competent play? It's on the offensive line. So I think after watching the Bruins against Utah, I'm just not concerned about that game at all for Penn State. So certainly nice because, whether it's a win or a loss against Oregon at the end of September, to go out and, have a game where you're probably not going to be challenged is a good thing. Hopefully all these words don't come back to bite me, because now I'm saying this all out loud. It's like I can just see it being 21-17 in the third quarter or something. But no, I had much higher expectations for UCLA, and they did not look good.
Yeah, join the club, Pat. I was saying the other week on our previous show that even though I said that UCLA game was one of the 2 toughest road contests, it wasn't one that exactly scared me. Yeah. The only issue I had with that was just it's a cross-country trip the week after the whiteout. So it just could be like Penn State just still coming off, emotional kind of game, win or lose. And, they may get off to a slower start out there, but I think you look at Penn State's talents compared to them. And also, Deshaun Foster, to his credit, he did seem to at least get the guys motivated to play towards the end of last year. But so far, they still look like the same undisciplined kind of team that you saw for last season.
I'm just expecting a little step in the right direction, right? If you took UCLA last year and put Nico on the team, maybe instead of going, I believe they went 5-7. Maybe instead of going 5-7, they go 7-5, which, solid. Did not look like a 7-5 team when they played Utah, but perhaps Utah is just much better than we think. Let's go national. Jarrett, your national overreaction from week 1. We actually fought over this one, and since you're the managing editor, you get to have it as your take. So.
I'll gladly take it then. So my overreaction is Miami is a legitimate national title contender, which I was not expecting to say. I was not high on them at all. I thought they were overrated, did not deserve to be in the top 10. I've just kind of wrote them off a little bit because I feel like under Mario Cristobal, he's a great recruiter. They've done great in the portal, but it just seems like they're always underwhelming. They're just play sloppy. They're not a physical team. Last year, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they couldn't really stop anyone. And on top of that, they just always seem like they just go out and underperform several times a year, where they lose a couple games at least that they shouldn't lose. They struggle against bigger opponents. So I just was not expecting much out of Miami this year. I thought they were going to lose by a couple scores Notre Dame, but not only did they win, but they were really impressive. They were good to line of scrimmage. They were very physical on defense, just night and day difference from last year. And Carson Beck really impressed me. And he's kind of one of those guys you think about our conversation about Aller earlier, but Beck didn't really have great receivers last year. Georgia led the nation drop passes last season. Their receivers were they were about as much of a non-factor as Penn State's receivers were at times last season. So, I thought Beck had a really strong performance, especially in the rain. They did get a couple lucky bounces that went their way to help contribute to the victory. But yeah, they were just so much more physical and just totally different than the past several years of Miami teams. And I feel like they're definitely worth the hype this season.
So one of the things I'm writing about for tomorrow's Stock Up, Stock Down post on blackstreetdiaries.com, make sure you're reading the website. Same. I was super impressed with what Miami was. I had 3 questions about them. 1, Carson Beck, is he healthy and is he good? I thought he looked super comfortable and looked, in command. And I think that was like one of the main, just general overall takeaways of college football in week 1 was the difference between veteran quarterbacks who have played a lot of football, your Carson Beck, your Garrett Nutzmeyers, your Drew Allers, and the guys that are supremely hyped but did not look quite as good, right? Obviously, Arch Manning kind of being the poster boy for that. But Carson Beck looked good. It looked like the wide receivers they got from the transfer portal, CJ Daniels, we talked about earlier with that great catch, Malachi Toney, a recruit, looked really, really good. And then defensively, getting Corey Heatherman from, I believe, Minnesota or Rutgers. He was at both. I think it was Rutgers to Minnesota, now to Miami. That Miami defense looks really good. The defensive line with Ruben Bain and Mesidor and David Blay, a guy that Penn State really wanted from Louisiana Tech in the transfer portal. They have some dudes on the defensive line, and they bullied Notre Dame, which is tough to do. So, yeah, Miami looks very, very good. Tim, let's go to you for your national take.
Yeah, so my national take, Kalen DeBoer, Alabama coach, has been getting killed by the press, by the fans over that loss to Florida State last weekend. There's already talk about him. Maybe this is his last year. He was only going to be a 2 years and done guy. I'm getting flashbacks to last season with Billy Napier, when it just seemed like it was a matter of not if, but when Napier was going to get fired. And I remember there's rumors like, oh, he'll be gone by Halloween, before Halloween. And then, he won just enough. He won enough key games, enough games at least to buy himself a little more time. And Florida, I think they were only projected to go like 5 wins or so last year. And they ended up having a winning record. I think they won like 7-8 games, including the bowl game. And, he's obviously his seat's still fairly warm. And if they, struggle again this year, he could be gone, but he has cooled things down. And, maybe it's possible. I think it's possible that DeBoer can do the same. I know it is a tough schedule ahead of time, for Bama. I mean, the next 2 games they should win because it's Louisiana Monroe and Wisconsin at home. But then, of course, they do go on the road to Georgia. After that, they have Vanderbilt at home, which you would think they would get some revenge after losing to them on the road last year. But who knows? Maybe Diego Pavia could get them one more time. And then on to Missouri with Bo Perbula. So, and then they play like 4 ranked teams in a row after Missouri. And so it's going to get tough, but I do think there's enough talent on this team though, that I think they can at least put up a good enough showing for DeBoer to at least keep his job for another year.
One of the things I did see, and this was Andy Staples on 3, said that, like, as opposed to some other cases where a school wants to fire a coach in the buyout, usually there's so much that they owe up front, whether it's immediately or 30 days. Like Mark Stoops, I know, for example, at Kentucky, like one of the reasons why they kept him last offseason and will probably have to keep him again this coming season, even if they go, 3-9 or something like that, is that he's owed a lump sum of money if he's fired. Kalen DeBoer apparently is not the case. They would owe him something like 60, 70 million or some outrageous number like that, but it could be paid in monthly installments dating all the way out to 2031. So it's much easier to find the cash. So that's the only thing Kalen DeBoer wise, which I will just say, if Kalen DeBoer gets fired at Alabama, like if I'm a Nebraska, Wisconsin, Illinois, Northwestern, right, any of these like mid-tier Big Ten schools, like Kalen DeBoer would be very high on my list if I was looking for a head coach. I think that guy's still a really good football coach. I think that it's a tough fit being he's originally from the West Coast and coached a little bit at Indiana. I think it's a weird culture fit for him, and more than anything else, just taking over for Saban as, yes, you're taking over a really good roster and a really good program, but you never want to be the guy that follows the guy. You want to be the guy that follows the guy who followed the guy. So, yeah, it's interesting to see what happens with Bama. I obviously like them a ton coming into the year. So, Jared, any Alabama takes?
Yeah, the day Saban retired, the news broke when I was driving home from work, and I just remember kind of thinking about Alabama in the pre-Saban era, and I looked up their yearly record, and between Bear Bryant and Saban, there was a lot of 3-4 win seasons. The 9-10 win seasons, they were sporadic. They were more the exception rather than the rule. So, that's a program that's had 2 of the greatest, maybe the 2 best college coaches of all time in terms of national championships, for sure. But they're not one of those programs that have just always consistently been good. So they're just kind of curious position right now. Are they going to maintain this excellence that the fans have just grown to take for granted and kind of assume whoever's in there, that's the expectations that they're going to be a national title contender? So it's just kind of interesting to see where they go from here. DeBoer is obviously a very good coach. His track record is just amazing. I remember there was a stat, if you took away his first 3 games at each stop, his record was like 74-2 or just something just absolutely incredible. So he's a good coach, but it was underwhelming. They got to play it on both sides of the ball. They've got some serious issues on offense to work out. So, and as Tim mentioned, the schedule's not going to get any easier. They got 5 ranked opponents coming up, and they also have a road trip to Auburn and the Iron Bowl, which means anything could happen. So I'm definitely not writing them off or think they're going to have a bad season or anything like that. But, just losing that first game and the way they lost it and consider what's ahead for them, the margin of error is suddenly very slim for them.
Just very un-Alabama-like. And I think there's something like 5-5 in the last 10 games, which is just...
It's unfathomable considering, the level they've been playing at the last decade or so.
Yeah, no. So, interesting times down in Tuscaloosa. My national take, I'm going to take you guys out to California, Cal, actually. I know we're not going there a lot for, college football takes or college football, anything in general as of late, but they signed one of the better. Well, okay, they technically didn't sign him because he signed with Oregon, but then after like 2 weeks on campus, he entered the transfer portal and transferred to Cal, who he was originally committed to before committing to Oregon and signed with Oregon. Really confusing. Either way, his name is, I'm going to try to pronounce it, Jaron Kiave Songapulatele. I think I nailed it. This kid is really, really, really good. And my overreaction to this is that Songapulatele will be a top 5 quarterback consensus in the country after, during this season and then after the season against Oregon State, which I understand that Oregon State is not what they, were even 2 years ago, but he had 234 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, ran for 30 yards as well. 6'3", 225 pounds, just, lefty, which I love, good lefty quarterback, just looks fantastic. So I think that he's going to be a guy that Cal doesn't have an extremely difficult ACC schedule. I think, if Cal goes like 7-5 and he plays the way he did against Oregon State, he's going to be a top 5 consensus guy. And I don't want to say we will have like our first like full on free agency in college football, because the portal has been open for a little bit, but it's tough to see Cal holding on to a kid like that. If he's going to go out there and he's going to put up 30 touchdowns and 7 interceptions as a true freshman, have all the tools that he does, looking like a potential number 1 pick. I'm interested to see what his high school coach's phone is going to look like, who he's going to be talking to, who his agent is going to be talking to, his representation will be talking to, because I don't know if you guys were able to catch the Cal Oregon State game at 11 p.m. on Saturday, but he looked really, really, really good.
Yeah, good for them, because Cal definitely had their work cut out for him to begin with, and then they had a mass exodus in the portal, especially in the offside. I think they lost like their top 3 running backs and several linemen, some receiver. I mean, it was looking ugly. So just if they can, he can carry them to 7-win season, a bowl game, that's just going to be an incredible story, considering what the expectations were for Cal and the type of offseason they had.
Yeah, it's interesting where all of a sudden Cal mainly lose Fernando Mendoza, who I think is a very good quarterback, super talented as well, and able to bring in this kid, and he looks very, very good. So interested to see what he does this season, and then perhaps even more interested to see what he does in the offseason. If he sticks with Cal, if he goes elsewhere, because he will command a pretty payday if he leaves.
All right. I say we consult the almighty Calgorithm to figure that out.
Maybe they can work out something NIL related, hopefully. All right, to wrap up this show, each Wednesday we're going to pick 3 big games, and pick the winners. We are picking against the spread because we don't have any sponsors, but DraftKings, FanDuel, whoever, you could be a sponsor. First game, Iowa at Iowa State. The Cyclones, 2-0 this year, are a 2.5-point favorite. We talked about Iowa beating Albany, but not looking exactly impressive during it, and their quarterback, Gronowski, struggling a bit. Jarrett, what side are you on here?
I'll take Iowa State and give the points. The week 0 game against Kansas State, I wasn't very impressed with their offense outside of Beck making some plays here and there, but as the game went on, it seemed like the offensive line kind of warmed down a little bit. So showed me some promising things there. Their defense looks incredible. So I really think between Beck against and Gronowski again, I think he's the clear better player under center there. So this is always a very tight game. It could be nothing. It can be one of those games where nothing happens for 3.5 quarters, and then all of a sudden everything you get a play after play. At the end of the 4th quarter where someone pulls it out in dramatic fashion. So I'm guessing we'll see a very close game once again, like pretty much always, but I like Iowa State to come out and cover the small spread.
Tim?
Yeah, I like Iowa State here as well to cover. I think it'll be a close game. These rivalry games, especially this one, always tend to come down to within 1 score. So, even despite Iowa's struggles to throw the ball, I think they find a way to keep us close. But I just think Iowa State, in a close game like this, like whose offense do you trust more? I definitely trust Iowa State and Rucko back leading the way at QB a lot more than I trust Gronowski leading Iowa down the field. So give me the Cyclones.
This game is always gross and disgusting, as Jarrett, you mentioned. Like, it's never I would say a fascinating or a pretty watch, unless you just, have some sort of
Elastico. That's why they call it Elastico.
Yeah, unless you just like weird, bad football. But my takeaway with this game is always like, just kind of go like the opposite of what everyone is thinking. And this is like classic Iowa to, everyone, like, we all hyped them up coming into the season. They look terrible against some opponent, but yet they find a way to win, right? They're going to beat the same way that they beat Utah State. They beat, Ohio State the same season. Like, that has happened in the past. And I don't know. I just get the sense that Gronowski is certainly better than what he showed on Saturday, and I think Iowa is going to be able to pull this one out. So certainly like Iowa to cover at the very least. So I will certainly take those points. Illinois goes to Duke, and this is a shame because Iowa and Iowa State is a noon kick. This is also a noon kick, and Penn State's game is also a noon kick. So 2 of the 3 best games are noon kicks during Penn State's game, which is not ideal for us.
Cloud box will be getting a lot of work on my TV.
Yes. Anyway, Illinois goes to Duke for a fascinating matchup. Illinois is the 3.5-point favorite, so Duke a road or a home dog. Tim, we'll start with you on this one. What are we thinking?
I'm taking Illinois to cover here. I think it's a bit, just like Iowa State, I think it's a bit close game decided within a touchdown. But yeah, I was impressed with how Illinois looked last week. I know it was Western Illinois, but they trounced them just like, Penn State was trouncing Nevada. And, Duke, yeah, they ended up winning, I think 45-17 over Elon in the end. They were actually tied with them at the half. They put it together in the second half. Darian Mensah throwing a few touchdown strikes. As much of a fan as I am of Manny Diaz, I do think this is an Illinois team that's got a lot to prove. I mean, there's a ton of hype on these guys as being a potential playoff team, and if you're going to make the playoffs, you got to win tough games like these on the road. And I think this Illinois team is Fluke Altmaier leading the way. I think the team is up for the task.
Jared?
Yeah, I high on both these teams this year. I think they're both going to have very good seasons. So a little disappointed, not going to really be able to pay close attention to this because I think this will be a really fun, competitive game to watch. The thing I like about Duke so much is with Manny Diaz's defenses, they're so good at getting offenses out of rhythm to the point where sometimes they just struggle to get anything going. They can almost keep that up for an entire ball game. I am expecting a pretty low scoring game, but I think Illinois will, lean on the running game a bit. I do think Illinois will win a very tight contest. So I could see this, Illinois winning by a field goal, and I'll take Duke in the 3.5. And I'll take, I think with the points, Duke can pull it out, even if they drop a close one.
I think the same thing as you do, Jared. I think these teams are pretty close. I would give the edge to Illinois. That's why they are a 3.5-point favorite, even on the road. But if this was 2.5, maybe it's a different story. But yeah, if you're giving me that field goal cushion, I like Duke here to at least keep it close and have some faith in Manny Diaz's defense to not let it certainly get out of hand and just to keep it close in general. So yeah, I will also take Duke and the points. And our last game, Michigan at Oklahoma. I would go first, but I'm actually still going back and forth in my own brain now that I'm thinking more about this game. So I'm going to kick it to Tim. Tim, what are your thoughts on this one?
So I like Oklahoma here, although I think the 5.5 it's a little bit high. I'm thinking this is going to be decided by a little less than that. I'm thinking Sooners by a field goal. Bryce Underwood is a good quarterback, but I don't know. I think they got to pump the brakes on the hype train a little bit with him. I mean, he had some good plays against New Mexico last week, but also, not his freshman moments, but he's, now he's got to go on the road for his second ever college football game at night at Oklahoma, a team that's, pretty stout defense, got a lot to prove, got a coach who's came into the season on a hot seat. Oklahoma really, really needs this one, especially. And, I think the Sooners, I think they'll stymie Underwood just enough to, maybe get a key turnover or two, which can, turn the course of the game. So I'll take Oklahoma, but I'll take Michigan
to
cover, but Oklahoma to win outright.
All right, Jared.
I really like the way Michigan closed out the season last year. So I kind of think they're going to, use that as a springboard into the season. I'm not saying they're going to, be national title contenders or anything like that, but I think we'll see a bit of improvement from them for last year. My big question with this game is, obviously Oklahoma probably has the quarterback advantage with Mateer versus Michigan going with the true freshman with Underwood, as obviously he's very highly touted, has a ton of potential, but that experience playing against a true freshman on the road is really going to help Oklahoma. But I'm going to go ahead and take Michigan and give the points. I think they're going to be able to pull out this game, at the very least, keep it very close, even if they do end up not being able to pull this off. I also kind of have a feeling this is going to be one of those seasons that whenever someone's anointed as the Heisman favorite, they're going to have a bad game and fall off that list a bit. So since I saw Mateer is now the Heisman favorite, for some reason, I'm not, he's a good quarterback. I'm not certain, if he should be rocket up that Heisman contenders list, though. So I just have a feeling he may struggle against what should be a pretty strong Michigan defense once again. I'm going to go ahead and take Michigan and give the points here. Or excuse me, take Michigan points rather.
Yeah, I'm on Michigan as well. Michigan 5.5 plus 5.5. I worry about Bryce Underwood, as Tim, you mentioned, and Jarrett, you as well. A true freshman, that being his first road start, is certainly tough. Playing against Brett Venables' defense, I think Oklahoma's defense is going to be better this year. But I just have I have enough faith in Michigan's defense to generally just keep this game close. And 5.5 is a weird number. It's a bigger number than I would expect. So yeah, I'm also going to I think Oklahoma wins, just because, again, it's hard to envision a true freshman coming in to Oklahoma and beating them. But I do like the idea of taking those 5.5 points and kind of having that. So I will also take Michigan plus 5.5 on this one. So we'll keep track of this, and hopefully all of us aren't like terribly bad, because if we all have like a losing record by like week 6, maybe we'll just like ignore it and hope that nobody asks us about it. But until then, we'll at least we'll pick 3 games every week, and we'll keep track, and whoever wins will get some sort of prize. We'll figure that out later on. All right, we went hour and 12 minutes on an FIU preview show. We deserve an award. I have a fantasy football draft coming up literally in 2 minutes, so I am signing off immediately on this. Tim, Jarrett, thank you as always for joining. Thank you to everyone who watched live, and for those of you that will be watching the replay of this, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure you like this video if you can. Make sure you're reading our stuff at blackshoediaries.com. We'll be back on Saturday, probably around 3 o'clock or so, whenever the Penn State game ends, to recap Florida International. We will see you guys then.